I found out something very unsettling about Harry. He gambles. What do you mean he gambles? He plays craps in the back room of a private club. I mean, you 11, come on, little Joe. Snake eyes, hard way 8s. That's how it goes. He loses a lot of money. You had no idea? No, I didn't.
Welcome to the Crap Vegas podcast.
Vegas, here we come.
Vegas!
Here are your hosts, Chris and Josh.
Hello, everyone. It is June 28th. I'm Chris, he's Josh, and Josh, this is somehow episode number 5 of the Crap Vegas podcast.
I don't quite understand it because I'm pretty sure, Chris, our last episode was 3.5. So can you help me understand how we got to 5 so quickly?
So if you've ever been in a Vegas elevator, you will see that certain floors are skipped because it's bad for, ancient tradition. And we are skipping number 4 because it's bad luck to us.
So when we reach episode 800, which should be really episode, maybe 300 or something like that, and you're listening back and you're confused because there's no episode 4, you can go with Chris's rationale, or you can say it's because we recorded episode 3.5, which we thought was going to be about 20 minutes. It ended up being an hour, so it's kind of like a full episode, so we're just skipping 4.
Just wait till we get to the 40s and they all get skipped, though.
Are we going to skip 13?
Well, we probably should. I mean, that would make sense to me, right?
So look for it. Oh, my goodness.
We're going to start using letters instead of numbers for our episodes. That's our only chance. Oh, shit. Well, you know what, people? If you want to get in touch with us, we do have an email address that we occasionally check. It is podcast@crapvegas.com. We have a text voicemail line that is 702-978-7775. Or the easiest way by far is always on Twitter. He's at Vegas Duffy, and I'm at Small Whale 13. And
Chris,
I have to say that we do check it, which I know you were about to get to, because it turns out Chris set up an email address and then forgot it existed.
So for those people that emailed us that didn't hear back, particularly from Chris, especially those of you that entered our contest, which we're going to talk about more at the end of the show, and we may or may not have had 3, 4, 5 correct guesses 10, before 15. Episode 3.5 when we said we didn't have a correct answer. It's all Chris's fault.
Well, you know what? It was set up to forward to my main email address, and a lot of those messages came through, and we did respond appropriately. But some of them, maybe 30, 40 of them, got stuck in my spam filter, and I just never knew that they came until one day I remembered maybe I should log into the actual email address itself and see what's in there. And it was fun catching up that night. A lot of people got emails from me the exact same night, so congratulations to all of you. But we do have a contest winner, and we will touch base on that at the end of the episode.
So I had to text Chris that day and say, can you please give me the logon information so I can participate?
Josh, how many times have you logged in since I gave that to you?
0.
Exactly. So it is still on my shoulders.
But if Chris dies and I have to run this podcast by myself, I know how to log in.
It will continue. That is
We're
very
going with
important.
That's right.
So our thought process with this, each episode going forward, is to have one main topic that we'll cover no matter anything else. And for this week, we wanted to talk about casino hosts. So anybody that follows us on Twitter or visits our website rather frequently will know that I put out an article about casino hosts a couple weeks ago. But casino hosts are one of the things that we get questions about more than anything. How you get one, what their role is, what you can and can't ask for, what different casinos expect. So we thought it would be good to spend a few minutes on the podcast and just run through some of those basic questions and just give you some more information on it. Sound good, Josh?
It sounds great. And I think you're right. I mean, this is of all Vegas related topics, I think casino hosts might be one that most people, that a lot of people really have questions about. And there's just so many gray areas and things that even you and I don't know, the inner
Sure. I mean, we know from our personal experiences,
right.
But everybody's experience may be different on this topic. So let's start off with the basics at least. Josh, in your eyes, what is the role of a casino host?
So casino host is normally employed by a casino, but I think, Chris, you might even talk to the fact that there are also independent casino hosts, but normally they're employed by the casino, and their role is to attract and keep gamblers that the casino feels are worth keeping, attracting and keeping in the property. So casino hosts will do a number of different things to try and keep gamblers that the casino wants to from leaving the property and continue to gamble there. I think that's really it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing I touch base on in my article that I think it's important for everybody to understand a distinction between is between what I would consider a casino marketing rep and a casino host. Every casino calls their people different things, so you can't really look at the title. Host may have 100 different words in front of their name on a business card. They're usually meaningless. It's just whatever, they decided to throw out that day, and some sort of distinction between levels. But in my eyes, there are kind of two different roles that hosts can play. A casino marketing rep is used usually by the larger corporations like Caesars and MGM. These are the people that when you hit a certain status level, typically, usually Diamond with Caesars. I'm not sure what it is with MGM because I honestly don't remember. But these are the people that send you emails every 2 or 3 days saying, hey, this offer is available for you, and you can come out on this weekend and get this. But all they're really doing is regurgitating the offers that are available to you online for yourself to book any day. And that's all they're really going to do is rebook that offer. Josh, have you ever had one of those people before?
Definitely had one of those people. And I thought, initially when that happened, that person was a regular host. Mm-hmm. And I think you'll quickly tell me if you think this is right, but I think you can quickly kind of figure out the difference is whether or not that person can go above or beyond the corporate offer. If the person has the ability to go above or beyond the corporate offer, and this might be on the back end based on your play, same thing. But if that person can go further than just 2 free nights and $30 of free play, whatever your corporate offer is, then you have a good idea that's more than perhaps a normal marketing rep and going somewhere into the casino host range. And like Chris, as you said, I think my host at Bellagio, for example's title is marketing executive. Yes, maybe
you can't look at those titles.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with that.
That can be confusing.
And I think usually a big distinction between the two, casino marketing reps, at my eyes, those people are not on property where you're going. They're typically in an office building in a different city.
That's a good point. That's a very good
Sometimes
point.
They're in the right city. They may be in Vegas, but they're not on property available to talk with you about any issues that you may have. They're just booking the offer that you have available. Now, don't get me wrong. Those people may be able to get a hotel booking through an offer that you may not be able to get booked because they've sold out of those rooms available under that offer. They can do things like that, but I don't expect those casino marketing reps to ever go above and beyond the basic marketing offer that's available. But on the other hand, there are casino hosts. And hosts themselves, that's where the true value lies in these properties. Hosts do not have those limitations of what's on your marketing offer. They don't care if you have an offer or not. All they care about is what value are you bringing to the property. Josh?
So I was just going to say, I think you're absolutely right. I was thinking about my very first contact from a host came from, it was on the Caesar side, and I'm pretty sure it was when I hit Diamond, and they proactively reached out to me, and I think it was a woman said, hey, I'm your host for Caesar's Properties, and she was based at Cromwell, and she said, I'm based at Cromwell, but I can help you with any of your of your Las Vegas needs. And she was something beyond just a marketing rep. She was actually a host. And, and I'll get to a little bit of a story with her later, but that was my very first one was somebody reached out to me when I hit Diamond and said, I'm your Caesars host, which was great. I was, that was the coolest thing in the world when got my very first host.
No, completely understand. I think the first time I ever had a host walk up to me when I was playing was at Monte Carlo. I was playing blackjack, I think in their high limit room at the time, maybe playing 100 a hand. This was a long time ago. This is at least 10 years ago.
Right.
Probably longer.
You probably had a host before I did, for sure.
Yeah, but he walked up to me and I think that's there's a difference between MGM and Caesars Properties. It may not be as big now. Back in the day, Caesars hosts, like you said, they could work across all properties in their portfolio, and they didn't care where your play was. You could stay at Cromwell and go play at Planet Hollywood or Caesars Palace or Bally's or whatever, and it was all just your trip ADT. That's all they cared about, and your trip Theo. On the MGM side, though, they did care. So if you had a host at Monte Carlo, he was only helping you for Monte Carlo, and they didn't want you walking over to, Aria or Bellagio or whatever it is and playing at a different property. and he was helpful. He gave me, rooms for future trips and stuff like that. But it's nothing like the host that we have today and what they're doing for us, but it was different times and different play levels. So why don't we talk about play levels and how people can actually get a host? So Josh, are you one of those people that waits for hosts to come to you, or do you like to initiate the conversation?
Well, I think I maybe mentioned this on one of our early episodes. Sorry, we're only on
We've had so many.
Years and years ago.
Yeah, that was back in 2017.
No, I was going to say, lost my train of thought. So as I said, that contact from the Caesars person was my very first, contact from a host, and they reached out to me. And the story is, I found my way over to Bellagio at one point, and I had my regular marketing offers from MGM, and I went up to the slot host desk, and there was a host there, and I don't even remember what the question was. Something about can you book a future stay for me or something like that, and he said yes, and he gave me his card, and he said, basically I'm your host at that point.
Yeah.
And,
so you were unassigned, and he was putting you under his wing.
I was unassigned, and I think he looked at my play. Maybe I was even staying there. I may have booked a corporate offer and probably was staying there. But he looked at my play and made whatever their criteria is, but that I was hostable, and he was going to be my host. So that was, and in fact, he still is my host at Bellagio. But that was how that happened. The other times I think are the way I like to find a host now, or have found my host now, which is finding, whether it's from the casino website or whether it's on social media or whoever, finding out who the hosts are at a various property, looking up a little bit about them if I can, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's just Google searches, or whether it's that in combination with the property's website, kind of doing a little research into those particular hosts and then reaching out to them proactively. It's what I did at Wynn. It's what I've done at Venetian, and it's what I actually just did at Aria as well. Saying, here's who I am, here's the level I play, here's, maybe a status that I am on another property. Are you interested in hosting me? And I got the answer yes at Wynn, and well, all the properties, Aria most recently, but also at Venetian and Palazzo, the same thing. So I reached out to those properties and said, I'm interested in being hosted. Is that something you can do?
Yeah.
How about you, Chris?
That makes sense to me. I mean, I'm usually the same way that you are in that case. I prefer to be proactive. Usually what I do is if there's a new property that I'm going to that I haven't, if I haven't been hosted there before or haven't been there at all, I'll go on their website. I'll take a peek and see, who the hosts are, try to get some information, try to decipher. The hardest part is figuring out which one are slot hosts and which one are table games hosts.
It's true. And sometimes you can't figure it out.
You can't, because they won't tell you. And you don't want to waste an email shooting it to a slot host that's going to have to say, sure, but you really need to talk to this person. And then they typically, when that happens, they're going to send you to the lowest host available that needs new patrons under their name. So I don't like being reassigned from that perspective. So I try to use word of mouth as much as I can, talking to people, that have hosted that property. What do you think of your person? Are they good? Are they bad? That helps a lot too. But yes, I would rather be proactive and have these discussions well before I get there and get everything set up than show up under just a standard marketing offer or even paying for a room and then trying to get everything comped off on the back. And
yeah,
at least
absolutely.
For me, I find the easiest way to do it is when you first make that, that contact with these people, tell them who you are, what your play level is, let them know, what kind of, either front money you want to bring in, or if you want to set up credit that you're going to be doing that. And then let them know the dates that you're interested in. And it shows them that you're a serious player, what they can kind of expect. And especially if you ask them about the front money application or the credit application.
Yeah, they like that.
They know exactly what they're getting their, what their hands into. And boy, that speeds up the process on getting a response. I'll say that.
Well, and Chris, you mentioned a couple episodes ago when you were talking about your trip to Encore Boston Harbor that you had been connected with a host there, and that host asked you if you wanted to set up credit in advance, and you said just for this trip you were gonna send some front money. And I think that shows them you're serious. If you're wiring in whatever amount of money it is, that host is automatically gonna say, okay, this is somebody that's actually gonna come here and gamble. And so if that's same thing with setting up a line of credit. If you are someone that that can and wants to do that, setting up a line of credit in advance, especially if it's goes into, at the same time you're working with that host for the first time, they're going to really love that.
Yeah, those wheels turn just a little bit faster when you do that. It's amazing. Even I give credit to the Encore Boston Harbor host. He was terrific. He's one of the nicest guys I've talked to. He was easy to work with. And when I told him I was sending front money, he was very excited about that. But I think probably a half an hour after I'd said that, he texted me back and said, "Hey, we just need to be on the lookout for that wire coming across. How much should we be looking for?" Did he really need to know that information? No. But at the same time, it really made him feel better about the trip and what he was doing.
You're going to wire in $100.
Yes. And Josh and I even joked when he sent that question. I even said it would almost be worth it just to respond back and say, "Well, it's going to be a pretty big trip for me, so I'm sending in $300 just to see what he says."
And we don't mean to say anything bad if your gambling budget for a weekend is $300.
But if he's giving me more than $300 in goods, It would not be exactly a great look. So
the other way, and Chris, you mentioned it, is word of mouth, and that led me to getting a host through someone else And I think that is, and Chris, if you don't mind me sharing, that's how Chris got your host at Win is my host.
Yes.
And
which worked out great. Fortunately.
What I was going to say is it's important if you want to go that way, if you know someone that has a host that really likes their host, always check. Well, I would suggest always checking with that host first to make sure that host is comfortable with you passing on their information. Maybe they're overwhelmed. They don't have the room for another client, or maybe for whatever reason they don't, who knows, but always check with your host to make sure it's okay if you share their contact information with somebody else, and they can ask you questions if they care about, any other specifics. But I recommend that for sure if you're going to pass a host along through word of mouth and recommendation and that kind of thing, because you don't want to hurt your relationship with your host either.
No, and I've had a handful of people that have reached out through DMs and stuff asking, who is your host at Win? Can I get their contact info? And for anybody that does, I'm always going to tell you no. I don't think he wants me to do that in the first place. But B, I don't really like giving out that information when I don't know you, I haven't played with you, and I can't really vet your playing style. Once we've, played together a handful of times, I think it's a different story for people. So if you have a good friend, that has that information, it's a different situation than just, somebody that, you're listening to their podcast or whatever. If I'm going to put my name on the line, vetting you as somebody that I think they'd be interested in, I want to make sure it's somebody that's going to be of value to them. Because like Josh said, it would come back to hurt me at the end of the day. So just be careful that we're not just giving, contact information out willy-nilly, because it can do harm at the end of the day if you're not careful.
Chris is just mean.
Well, I mean, I am, but but I'm not trying to be in this case. I'm just trying to protect all parties involved. And sometimes I think it is better just to go reach out blindly. Then there's no expectations coming into it. You can explain your own story. You can tell them who you are as a player. And then if they want to accept that, that's great. And if they don't, then no problem. Move on to another property that would, gladly welcome that action.
The other way you can get a host that I don't think we really talked about is at the end of your stay. If you go to a property and you don't have a host, whether you're comped or not, if you put in play that you think is worthy or sufficient to get a host, stop by that host desk when you're on your way out, your last day or the night before your last day, and say, here's my, would you pull up my play history? I wanted to find out, can you, comp whatever my charges are or anything like that? And am I hostable? Or is my play sufficient to get a host? Something like that. So I know a lot of people, a friend of mine at Win recently, hadn't stayed at Win before, played all weekend, went to the host desk at the end of the trip to ask if they could get, charges taken off. And the person said, "Do you have a host here?" And the other person said no. And he said, "Well, I'm your host now."
Cha-ching.
You're right. So, that's the, the end, another way you can do it is based on your play of a particular trip, check at the end of your stay.
Yeah. And expectations are going to vary for what's hostable based on the property. So, I mean, what's hostable downtown is not the same as what's hostable on the Strip at Treasure Island. That's not the same at Caesar's Palace. It's not the same at Wynn or Venetian Palazzo. There are different levels, that are attainable at each property. So, $100 player may be able to be easily hosted downtown or even at some of the smaller Strip properties. If you're playing, $100 on a blackjack table or $100 in craps bets at any given time, That may be a perfectly hostable person that they'd be glad to have. That may not fly at Wynn, but that's okay. There's still other properties that'd be glad to have you. At some point,
Right.
you just have to do some value economics of, what is it worth to you to be at certain properties? Would you rather be, a very happily comp player at a smaller property or downtown? Or would you rather be a borderline player at a bigger property? And you may, that may ebb and flow as you get older and income levels change and play levels change.
So, Chris, here's a question for you as you're talking about that. When we think about, casino marketing offers versus having a host, or in addition to having a host, what do you think of as, does everyone need a host? Let's say you're hostable. Do you think that everyone should have a host? What are they giving you? I guess, What are they giving you in addition to your marketing offers? And what's the downside of having a host? Or do you see any downside to having a host?
I'd rather have no host than a bad host. And we will talk about that in a second.
And we'll talk about
so
that.
no,
Yes,
I
that's a
do
good
not
point
think
too,
that,
right?
I don't think everybody needs a host. It just depends on what you're really looking to get out of it. If you just want a free hotel room and a certain amount of free play or a certain amount of food, then no, you don't need to go through the hassle of a host. And with having a host comes certain expectations on your play level.
That's what I was
that
gonna
you
say,
need to
right.
meet every trip. If you just book their marketing offer, you kind of have free will to do whatever it is that you want. You don't really have to worry about anything, being back charged to you at the end of the trip. With a host, that's a different story.
And you don't have to worry about, and I'm sorry if some people think this is, silly or whatever, but you don't have to worry about letting anybody down. That
plays
factors
into it.
into my, if you have a host for a long time, or even, or whatever, you build a kind of a friendship with them or a relationship with them, and you don't want to, you don't want to hurt that person's livelihood. You don't want to hurt that person, whatever. And so I think about that, am I playing not just to the level that is expected of me to get offers to come back, but at the level that my host wants me to play at, and I know some of that's part of the game. They want you to have those thoughts, but it's nonetheless still there.
They're professional friends is what
Right.
they are.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely, it plays into it for me at least. I know not for everybody. There are some
Right.
people that are laughing at this saying, who cares?
Well,
But
exactly right. Yeah.
I don't like letting people down in general in life, and that still applies if I'm in a casino setting.
Mm-hmm.
So why
And you
don't we
don't
talk
have
about
that. Oh, I was just going to say, Chris, you don't have that if you're just taking the marketing offer. If I'm just booking a stay at Aria or whatever through the email that I just got today, there are 50 million emails that come from all the MGM properties at the same time.
Yes.
If I want to click the link and book the one for MGM Grand or Aria or whatever, there's no allegiance to that particularly, and yes, if I didn't play there, would I get that marketing offer in the future? Probably not. But your expectations are much lower, I'd say, than if you were booking it through a live person that's your host. There's just more that goes into that expectation, I think.
I agree. So why don't we talk about the difference between a good host and a bad host? And I know that this is always a touchy topic because not everybody wants to air dirty laundry over experiences that they had. I usually don't have a problem doing it. But
he's much more likely to.
Yeah, I just kind of say what I feel at the time. But let's talk about good host. So when I wrote my article a couple weeks ago about host, in my eyes, Josh, there are three things that I think a good host is going to do every time, no matter what. Number one, and you can tell me what you think of this, is they ensure the player feels valued, appreciated, and welcome at their property.
Absolutely. And, this went into a little bit, I talked about it on the last episode, that, when my host met me at the door for the first time on our last trip, that went so far in making me feel welcome and appreciated. And again, we are on the grand scale of Wynn players pretty low on the totem pole, I think.
Yeah.
But that made me feel like I was, somebody staying in the presidential suite or something like that. So that went a long way as far as, and that's such a small thing, but that was a little thing that goes to your first point about making me feel appreciated.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. My second thing was they get you the comps that you deserve, because a marketing offer never really reflects what your value is to a casino. And, you said, do you need a host? No, you don't need a host. But there are certain things that hosts do and take care of that aren't going to be part of any marketing offer. Things as small as like Wi-Fi charges. Are you going to get hit with Wi-Fi fees on the back of your trip? At some properties, they might want to try to hit you with resort fees. you're never going to pay those if you're a hosted player. You know,
Right.
mini bar charges that may be excluded from food and beverage offers that you have, or certain stores that they really don't want to include in the generic marketing offer, but your host just goes ahead and throws in there anyways to keep you happy. Transportation. I don't think there's only one place I've ever seen that ever put transportation on a generic marketing offer. It was Treasure Island. So I haven't taken them up on it.
No, you're forgetting the flights to Laughlin.
I do not count Caesar's Air. Yeah, same thing with MGM's Air program. No, I don't. Those junket flights, I do not consider to be the same thing. But you know what? If somebody's actually taken one of those trips, shoot us some feedback. I'm actually really curious about that topic. I have no experience. I've never taken them up on that. But if you've taken one of those like Caesar's Air where they give you 2 seats and you have to fly out on X day and come back on Y day and they transport you back and forth.
Planes. And I don't mean any offense. But
it's Sun Country or whatever the regional jet is they have available that day. It's whatever Spirit sold off a couple years ago. That's what it is. But if you've ever had one of those, please let me know. I'd be interested to hear what it's like. But getting Chris, those extra comps, I think, is really important.
And I was just going to say, we were talking about getting the comps that you feel you deserve. So the story I have, and this goes back to that first host at Caesars. So she went on maternity leave, and it just so happened that I was staying. Actually, I think I was staying at Rio. For the Star Trek convention, which I go to, which we'll probably talk about when it happens. And she had gone on maternity leave. So she sent me an email saying, and she had booked my stay, saying, this is the person that will be, your point of contact while you're here, if you have any questions. And so I had my weekend at Rio and went to the host desk at the end of the trip. And I said, hey, can you take off these remaining charges? And they took off about $100 of whatever the charges were, not the whole thing. And I was fine with that. I hadn't played a ton. I hadn't, it was fine. Didn't object or anything. Got home, was looking at my credit card statement a few weeks later, and I noticed that $100 or maybe it was even $200, whatever, had been taken off. Like they reversed the remaining charges. Okay. And I had no idea why. I had no idea what happened. I emailed that woman who was, taking over for my host. And I said, what happened? And she said, I looked at your play and saw that it was, more than what they gave you at the host desk when you left. And so I reversed those other charges. And this was awesome. Someone that wasn't even my regular host. And I have not ever talked to her since. And that was just like the best, it was $100 or $200.
But it doesn't matter what the amount was.
Right. It was the comps I deserved based on my play. And I felt so, beholden to her and to the property for having done that. It really went a long way and, making me want to return back to, use them again as host and that kind of thing.
And I think that's what's lost on casinos a lot. That $100 or $200, whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. They're going to get that back 10 times over by that goodwill gesture at the end. It's going to make you want to return to the property. You're going to gamble there again. You're going to spend money on other services while you're there. They get it back. There's no reason to fret over that sort of thing. But it made you feel good at the time. It made you feel, cared about by the property, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really good. So that was just an example of, getting the comps that you deserve. And those were ones I didn't even know I deserved.
There you go. And those are the best ones, which takes us to point number 3. I think a good host at all times, they'll surprise you. It doesn't matter how they surprise you, but they just do something that's unexpected that makes everything just a little bit better. So a perfect example of this, and we talked about this a little bit when I went up to Encore Boston Harbor, and anytime you're talking about Win Host, you're talking about a good experience in my eyes. But when I was heading to Encore Boston Harbor, I actually reached out to my Win Vegas host and said, hey, I'm going out there. Do you have a name or something that I should reach out to if I'm going to play at that property? And he quickly shot me back a text or an email, I can't remember, saying, don't worry about it. I'm going to have them reach out to you. I'll take care of it. So within an hour or two, I got a call from a guy out at Encore Boston Harbor that was a host. He had all my play pulled up. He knew exactly who I was, exactly what to expect, didn't ask any questions or anything. He said, no worries. I got your hotel set up. I got your transportation set up from the airport. Everything's taken care of. You don't need to worry about anything. Well, all that stuff's great. That's usually what you can get from a host that's pretty good at their job. But I showed up on property. I got up to the table. Within 5 minutes, he was there. He was introducing himself, shaking his hand, and talking about a surprise. They have black card lounges in Encore Boston Harbor, which Josh would have loved. But I'm just a low-level, platinum card holder still chasing it at this point. But he came over and he's like, look, see the door right there, sir? That's the Black Card Lounge. It has some, light food and drinks and stuff like that. He said, I know, you're only a platinum card, but he said, I've had you added to the list for the whole weekend. You don't need to show your card or anything. Just give your name when you go up to the door and they will gladly take care of you. They know you're coming. You're all set. That is absolutely awesome. It's the same as when a casino host leaves a bottle of your favorite, alcohol in your room when you arrive, or a little plate of food or something like that. Those are the sort of things that really separate what I consider great host from just okay host.
Yep. As you're talking about that, I'm thinking about my favorite host at Bellagio. Unfortunately, is passed away. Is no longer with us. He wasn't even my host, and this was a person. His name was Joe. I feel comfortable saying this is a good story, but he was not my host. I went into the host desk at Bellagio one time to just ask for late checkout. That was all I was looking for. I knew my host was going to take care of my charges and wasn't worried about that. Just wanted to have him set up a late checkout. And he looked at my play and he saw that I lost a fair bit that trip. And he said, is there anything else I can get you? Do you need anything else? How about a limo to the airport? He without even, no prompting from me, no nothing, just wanted to, he saw that I lost a fair bit that trip and said, what else can I do for this guy? And it just so happened that this particular host had been a former table games dealer and supervisor at Craps.
Oh.
And so he started talking to me. He must have talked to me about a half an hour about ways that I could play craps to get my rating better, to have MGM Bellagio, treat me better because I had a higher rating, and that kind of thing. And anyway, it was just like the best experience. And I have no idea really if he was a great host or not a good host. I only had that one interaction with him at that level, but I made a point every time I was at Bellagio to go by and say hello to this guy and, thank him for his help and, say, I'm playing craps the way you suggested. I've switched from being a come better to a place better, all because you said it would get me rated better. And anyway, that's just, as you were talking about host, this is one I really would love for this person to have been my host. Not that I have a bad host at Bellagio, but just that this guy I really thought highly of. And, that leads to, if you ever want to switch host, it is a difficult process. I didn't try to in this situation. I'm just saying we've looked at that in other situations, or at least I have. It's hard to switch hosts at a property. So if you end up with a not great host, sometimes that can be hard to change, I think.
Yeah, I've fought that battle recently at a property that you mentioned within the past 60 seconds. And no, I don't want to call them out by name. But that leads well into what a bad host is in my eyes. And, honestly, I have such low expectation for hosts, so it's really hard to be bad with what I expect. But there's one thing that I expect every host to do, no matter what, just as a baseline courtesy, and that's be responsive.
It's not flowers on the pillow.
Do not care about that stuff, Josh. But you know what? If I send an email to you or I send you a text or something like that, I expect to get a response within a business day or so. And I think that's being lenient. And I try to always factor in what their days off may be.
Right.
I try to know what days. Yeah. I try to know what days my hosts are off with their 2 days off a week, because it's never Saturday, Sunday. That's typically not the case for hosts. But I try to know what their days off are. And that's why I never actually even follow up until it's been at least 3 days, just to ensure that it wasn't their weekend and they're just, not there at the office. But talking about a bad experience, I was considering staying at a certain property in the beginning of July for this upcoming trip I'm going on. And I reached out to the host on a Tuesday. I sent him an email and said, hey, here's the dates I'm coming. Was hoping you could get everything set up for me. And they have a good history of my play. They know what the value to the casino is. This is not a reach by any means to make this request. And a couple days went by and nothing. The weekend hit, still hadn't heard anything. And I'm texting Josh. I'm like, Josh, what would you do in this situation? He's like, oh, just give it one more day. I'm sure on Monday, this person will get back to you. Monday comes along, still nothing. So it had been 5 days and I had heard absolutely nothing. So Josh goes, well, you could always reach out to somebody else. And I was like, well, that's true. So I started hunting on the website. I've picked out the person I thought that might be a good fit. I'd seen him before at the property. And I shot him an email and I tried to politely explain, I have a host at your property. They've been unresponsive in the past and even up to this trip. I'd appreciate if I could be reassigned, and here's my trip dates, and I'd like to get something scheduled. A couple days pass, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I'm thinking, what did I do to piss these people off? Well, 3 days later after that, I get an email from the original host that I had reached out to more than a week ago with an email that just says, hey, your room's booked. See you then. That's it. That was the whole email. No
specifics
sorry,
on anything else, right?
No, sorry, it took me. I was out of town. Family member died. No, nothing. Nothing from the guy that I had emailed the second time saying, hey, can I be reassigned? Just the original guy saying, hey, I booked your room. Have a great day. It was probably the most frustrated I have been with a property in a very long time. And anybody that follows me on Twitter would have seen me venting about a certain property right around that time. And that's what I was venting about. I just don't get that just nonchalance and non-caring when it's worth thousands to them as a host. So I don't understand how you ignore it. I mean, for those that aren't familiar, hosts get paid typically based off your Theo loss. Some properties use actual loss, but that's actually pretty rare. It's usually based off your theoretical loss while you're there. And for an average host, they usually make 12, 14%. So if you're somebody that has a Theo loss of $10,000, they may make $1,200, $1,400 off of you. So and that trip is money in their pocket.
I was just going to say Theo loss for folks that don't know is just the amount you're expected to lose based on the game you're playing and the levels you're playing and the time you're playing. So the straight mathematical odds of whatever it is you're expected to lose, then the casino host gets a percentage of that. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, and we're horrible at explaining things, so
that's okay. That's why I wanted to jump in.
Why even try? We've learned listening, going back to previous episodes. We are terrible at explaining what we're talking about. But
we're working on that.
We just like to rant and vent. I think it's more fun that way. But that sort of thing is what puts a bad taste in my mouth. And it's also the reason that I haven't gone back to that property and probably won't. I'll probably, relocate to a different MGM property if I want to give that brand another try.
And I think it's important to say, and Chris, see if you agree with me, but I think you can have great hosts or bad hosts at any level of property. I think there are people that are hosted at, and I don't mean again to throw Excalibur, for example, under the bus, but I think there are people that are hosted at Excalibur that probably have fantastic hosts.
Oh, I'm sure there is
great hosts. And there are people at, a higher end property. I'm not going to say Wynn because I'm sure there are no bad hosts at Wynn.
No, but Venetian Palazzo,
right? That probably have not, have a not great experience with a host or, a not great host. So I think that maybe the quality or caliber level of the property makes a difference. But I think you can have good hosts at lower tier properties and bad hosts at higher tier properties. I think some of it, unfortunately, is just luck of the draw.
It is,
if you're
which I hate,
enough
but it's 100% true. It's just who did you get assigned to that day, and are they a young go getter that really wants to lock you in at a young age and build you over time, or are they somebody that looks at you and says, you're not worth my effort. I'll do the bare minimum.
But if you have a good host, what they are hoping to do is nurture you and grow your appreciation for that property so that you continue to play more or play more frequently. And that then in turn increases their income. And that's,
I think the word is, I think the word is groom, Josh. That's what you're looking for there.
Nurture.
Nurture sounds a lot better, doesn't it?
That's right. But, I think Chris and I mentioned, that over time, our level of play has gone up and I'm sure that our hosts appreciate that and want that to continue and are doing what they can to have that continue. And a good host will do that and will make you feel good in the process. And a bad host is really, as you said, just not, doesn't seem to really care about you, doesn't seem to really value your play, which isn't what a host should be.
I agree. Anything else you want to add about host, Josh? I think we've gone on enough about it.
Well, I was just going to say my absolute one of the things that I think sets, I'm trying not to be too bubbly about Win and that kind of thing, but
that's our role, I think.
Yeah, sorry. But my favorite experience so far, my best host experience was 3 trips ago or so at Win. I got a text from my host, on whatever Friday evening said, would you like to go to be our guest at the Academy of Country Music Awards, which was at Allegiant Stadium, and go to the red carpet event beforehand. And
Ooh.
I was there with friends during the weekend, but was there by myself at this. In fact, Chris, I think you were there over the weekend.
I was there for the weekend, but let it be known for the record, I was not invited to this event.
You were going to be my +1 if you had been there. But Chris, as usual, leaves a day earlier than I leave, or had been in this trip. So I went to this. I said yes, I'd love to go to this thing. I had to get COVID tested the day before. There were a lot of hoops I had to jump through to go to this, and I won't go into the whole story. But it was an amazing experience, and thanks to Win, I'm not that for setting me up and for hosting me at this. It was a tremendous experience. I won't go into the whole thing, but long and the short of it is, I got to spend 9 hours that day with a couple other gamblers and their other and their guests, and I was by far the lowest on the on the level of gambler in this excursion. But I got to spend 9 hours with my host and have this amazing day, and that went so far in just my sorry to fawn again, but my my enjoyment, my love for the property, it just went a really long way being offered this experience that that I have no idea how they picked me. Maybe they had 19
bottom of the barrel. This is what we got left.
Spots available, and they got down to me as everybody else said no on a Monday night or whatever it was. But anyway, it was a great experience, and that was probably my best host experience. And I think really good hosts, kind of circling back to where we started, really good hosts will do things like that, Chris, that, as you said, that surprise you. That, I had no idea that this was ever going to be something that would be offered me, let alone that I could do. And we've had, a couple of those recently, little surprise things that have come up.
I agree.
Sometimes they work. Sometimes you can take advantage of them. They're offers that you can be there that weekend or whatever the situation is. Sometimes they're not, but those experiences go a long way.
And you know what the good news is, Josh? Next time you get invited to something like this, now you have a brand new tie from the kitten store. So you can look very fancy in your new tie.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on to a question we received from a listener. His name's Raul Mendoza. Raul says, "Hi there, big Vegas fan here, but also a big new fan of the podcast." Thank you, Raul. Flattery goes a long way. He enjoys following on Twitter for our last trip. He goes a couple times a year to Vegas, but he had a couple questions. He wants to know, what do you feel is generally a good buy-in amount to a table when playing 270 across on the craps table?
So typically if I'm going to be playing 270 across, 3,000 is what my standard buy-in is to begin with. I think somewhere between 3 and 5. I think if you're anything below 3, that doesn't get you very far at playing 270 across. If you have 3 or 4 .7s, you're in big trouble off that $3,000 buy-in quickly. So even though I might buy in for that, I'll have markers available or anything like that, so I could dive in further if I need to. But I have a mental thing. I don't like to go in much more than that to start with. Some people I know, Chris, before you jump in, that don't want to play at that level, but like to buy in higher. So, I know someone that will always buy in with 8,000, even though he has no intention of losing any more than, say, 1,500 or something like that. But if you're playing 270 across with a $25 line bet with odds or a $50 line bet with odds, I think you really need essentially 10 times that. I think you need close to 3,000 really to withstand the variance. What about you?
Yeah, I think you hit the key thing that I was going to mention. I think it depends on, your pass line bet and how much you're taking in odds. And if there's anything else going on, or do you have big feature bets or anything crazy like that, or hard ways that you're playing? My thought is, at any given time, I typically have $450, $500 in play when I'm starting off.
Right.
I don't like even 3,000. I know that's typically what we buy in for on a marker, but that being said, we have a lot more available on the back end, so it really doesn't matter what we bought in for.
Yeah.
But if it was me going to a cash table like I do at some of my local properties, if I'm truly playing at that amount, I honestly feel like 5,000 is probably the better place to buy in.
Yeah,
one of the biggest issues that all gamblers have, whether it's at craps or blackjack or whatever it is, they don't buy in for enough to handle the variance of the table. Mm-hmm. So they get in, they run out of cash too quickly, they can't rebuy. So there never is a chance for the table to kind of rebound naturally back to where it probably should be. You'll catch 15, 20 bad hands in a row on a blackjack table. And if it's a $25 table, and you only bought in for $300, well, you're done. But if you bought in for $1,000, even though you didn't plan on using it, you could probably get right back up to near where you started. Right. So I like having a little bit more flexibility on the top end, especially if I'm a cash player.
When I used to play at Bellagio, when I was playing 135 across, I was buying in for between 1,000 and 1,500. That was kind of my regular buy-in. And again, with always a little more somewhere, whether it was a line of credit or in my pocket or something like that. But
sure.
But I think, kind of my rule of thumb is that you really should at least have available 10 times whatever your average bet is to withstand, particularly in craps where, the variance can be just pretty heavy. Yeah. Which again gets to what we talked about last week with crapless. If you're playing crapless and you're playing 270 across. Did I get that right, Chris?
370 across.
Darn it, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, you're really coming along, Josh.
Darn it. I was all proud of myself for adding.
I know for those that can't see the video of Josh, he was very proud of himself getting that number, even though he was wrong.
No, it's wrong. Anyway, I was going to say that then you have, obviously you have $100 more out there if you're playing 370 across. You need to,
sure.
It's those variances and how many 0.7s is it going to take in a row to kill you? And if you're comfortable with, I guess the other question is how long do you want to play? If you're comfortable with losing that, whatever your buy-in is, if you're playing 270 across, back to Raul's question, and you're willing to just be there for 10 or 15 minutes, that can impact your, whatever you're buying into, right? If you want to play for an hour, if your expectation is to go and play for an hour or 2 or 3 or whatever, you've got to have a lot, you should have a lot more in case the variance goes against you.
And good for Raul. His second question led into our opening segment and to what you just said, Josh.
I knew that.
It's almost like we planned this question to come right after. His second question says, playing, say, 135 across, is that enough to get rated at a place like Wynn or at a Caesars property?
So it's definitely enough to get rated at a Caesars property, including at Caesars Palace. If you're playing a quarter on the line and 135 across, so you're getting rated. So, and when we say 135 across, we mean 25 on the 4, 5, 9, and 10, and 30 on the 6 and 8, right, Chris?
Yep.
Not counting the point. So you're plus your line bet, so $25. You're getting rated at 165 or 160. Plus if you have a little bit more. So that's a fine rating to be, in my opinion, for you to get hosted at a Caesars property, or at most MGM properties. That's about what I was playing at Bellagio, and I was getting nicely hosted.
I agree. And Raul, from your email, you said, is that enough to get rated? I assume that you meant hosted. Rated, they'll rate you at almost anything.
Right.
I mean, some properties will say they won't rate you if it's less than a quarter action. But beyond that, no, they'll rate you for anything that you're playing. You'll get some kind of offer based off your play. If you're playing, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, when I was a come better playing, I used to play the 3-point Molly, and which, if you don't know craps lingo, that's a pass line bet and 2 come bets with odds. That was how I played craps for years and years and years and years until, again, that host at Bellagio said you should play this way and get rated higher. It ruined my life. No, but
that's we how can make more money.
That's right. That's how I played craps for years and years, and I was hosted then. So, you can even get rated and hosted is the better word, I think, but at a lower level than that. But if you're playing 135 across with a $25-ish line bet, you're fine to get hosted at all the MGM properties and I think all the Caesars properties.
I agree. I don't think it would rise to the level at Wynn, Venetian Palazzo, properties of that stature. I think you'd probably be pushing your boundaries there on getting somebody to really be interested in hosting you there. But pretty much anything else, including even Resorts World, I think you're good at that level.
And then to this is a topic that I know Michael Traeger likes to talk about a lot. But if there's anything you can do to, excuse the expression, but goose your rating a little bit, then that can only help you. And whether however whether that's increasing your tips or anything like that, if you can get that rating boosted from 160 up to 200, that can go a long way. And I was told just anecdotally, I think I mentioned this previously, that Wynn expects an average rating at craps of 2 to 250-ish to be hostable. So if you're playing 135 across and you can somehow get that rating into the 250 range, right? You can, you'd be even perhaps hostable, at a property like Wynn.
And Josh hit the key point there. I always say this. Tipping, I think, is by far the easiest way to get your rating much higher than it deserves to be across the board, no matter what game you're playing and what casino that you're playing at. It doesn't have to be like this super. I know a lot of players like it to be super obvious and like $5 on the 9 for the dealer. See this, box man? No, please don't do that. That's really annoying. And that actually that irks me at the table when they do that. But making bets for the dealers, it doesn't have to be continuous, but just throwing them bets fairly, once here in a while, and just getting them out there on the game. They'll recognize it. The dealer will. The box will see it eventually as well too. And then all of a sudden that 175 average bet does go to 200 because they said, well, he had $10 in for the dealers at any given time. He's a nice guy. They have incentive to try to make you a more valuable player because the dealers liked you and the dealers want to play with you again.
Right. So if you can get that, if you can have that average boosted just a little bit by factors other than your exact bets, then, all the better. And more likely you are to get, either hosted if you're not, or better, comp offerings.
Okay. So thank you for that question. We do appreciate it, Raul.
Yeah, thank you, Raul.
Yeah, we also got an email from Bruce Henderson. Bruce said, I enjoy your podcast and the Crap Vegas website. Well, thank you again. We really appreciate that, Bruce. A question, is tipping your casino host the proper or customary thing to do? If so, how much is typical? Thanks. And boy, this is a hard question to answer, Bruce. Josh, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, so my thoughts are a couple things. I had the same question, and I have researched that question to death. Chris, you are current. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're good.
Okay. Sorry, folks. Chris is frozen on my screen, but as long as our audio is still working, then I think we're good.
You can still see my beautiful face. That's all that matters.
I was just going to say, sorry, I got distracted there. So I think tipping your host is a question that I have had and looked into, and we get asked a lot. And I think it varies. I think the best thing to do is to ask your host if you're inclined to tip your host. First of all, you don't have to tip your host. Your host is getting compensated based on your play. And so you're already, paying, if you will, paying your host's salary. You're already giving your host the benefit of your play. And I don't think there is an expectation that a host, your host should be tipped. That said, if your host is really going above, corporate offers and going out of their way for you, then I think it's appropriate to tip. And if you just like that person and want to tip them for the services they're providing you, I think that's good too. So I think whether or not it's proper, I think is up to each person to decide. But I think that if you do decide that you want to tip your host, which I do on occasion, I don't always tip my host, but I do on occasion, and I try and make it as regularly as possible. I think you should ask your host if that's something that are they allowed to accept tips, because some properties are yes, some properties are no. Some won't let you tip in cash, but will let you tip in gifts or something like that, gift card, something like that. So always check with your host if you want to. But the answer to your question is it depends, and I think it's up to each person. It's not for me to say that you should tip your host. They are, as I said, being compensated by your play. But if you really like your host and you value that relationship, it's not a bad idea. What do you think, Chris?
I think you hit a lot of the key points. Yeah, I've struggled with this myself because it's always an awkward conversation that you don't want to have to message them and say,
really
hey, can I tip you? But there's really no way around it unless you want to really just stop by the host desk, the host on duty, and just ask them, hey, what is your corporate wide policy, so that you don't have to ask your host directly the question. But being the person that I am, I just, I'm balls to the wall. I just ask the question and see what kind of response I get. Most hosts will tell you the same thing. They can't accept a tip. They can't accept a gift. And they're saying they can't accept cash, but they can accept some sort of token of appreciation for what they've done for you. Now, to you, that may mean a gift card, for something. For some people, they gift bottles of alcohol. I'm not a huge fan of that. And I know some hosts are absolutely against that because they may not drink, or they just end up giving it away.
Right. What do you do with 17 bottles of alcohol?
Yeah, I mean, you can only get so many. So I understand it's very difficult to find the right gift for these people to make them feel appreciated. But honestly, most of the hosts that I talk to, as soon as I ask that question, the response I get back after they explain that they can't accept tips, they can accept gifts, is that, no, thank you for your play, Chris. That's all the appreciation I need. Just please keep coming back and playing with me.
Right.
And I think that's the best answer a host can give if they're in that situation, because it takes the pressure off you on feeling like you need to do something, but also makes you feel valued as a player. So it's kind of a win-win.
Right. I think that's right. And just to specifically to the question that was asked, when I have tipped host, when I do hit tip host, I usually give an Amazon gift card. That's how how
I've done it before as well.
Right.
In amounts, I mean, that's personal to you.
Right.
I would think anything from $20 up to $100 is perfectly fine. It's anything you give is going to be appreciated because they really don't expect anything. So you can't go wrong. There's no too small amount. There's no too big amount.
Right.
But don't give all your value as a player away in a gift card. That wouldn't make sense either. So let's go on to the next question we have here, Josh. Somebody sent it in. I don't have a name with it, so I apologize for that. But they asked, do you hedge if there's 1 point number left on the all tall small? So they're saying you've hit the small one number away. That's a box number that you could actually place a bet or lay a bet on. So you still need the 8 to make the all tall small. Do you hedge that bet by laying the number, hoping that if it doesn't hit, at least you're going to get paid somehow? Josh, what are your thoughts on this?
So my thoughts are, first of all, if you aren't familiar with the all tall small, it's hitting every number from 2 through 12 except 7 before a 7 comes. That's how you get that feature bet. There's a little more to it, but that's the basics of it. So what we're talking about is if there's one number, if you've hit all those numbers, but there's one of the box numbers, one of the point numbers left before you hit the main feature bonus, which pays currently 150 to 1. Is that right, Chris?
Where you are, 175 where I am. Yeah.
And in Vegas, most properties, at least most properties on the Strip, are the 150 to 1. If you want the good odds, go to the Palms, as we found.
Yeah, we found that out last week. Yeah,
which is a plus. But anyway, so if you have one number left, do you hedge? The answer that for me is no. That said, I will, if I have a place bet on that number, a lot of times I'll take that place bet down. The reason that I don't hedge is my thinking is it's already, and I don't have the percentage in front of me, but you're already, the odds are really in the house's favor on the all tall small bet. So you're already giving away, whatever the percentage house edge is just to get that bet. And as we know, any bet on the craps table is, or any bet period, is in the house's favor. So if I'm already invested in the all tall small, why am I going to put more money out there that's also in the house's favor? So I'm just making another bet that is not in my favor by laying that number. Now that's easy to say when you're talking about guaranteed money. If you're one number away from the features and that number is an 8, for example, and you lay the 8, you're going to win on either side of that bet for sure. So I think, and this is something that Mark and Dr. Mike have said on You Can Bet on That, which is if it's life-changing money, if that feature bet has the potential to give you life-changing, maybe life-changing a little extreme, but really make a difference in maybe pay for your whole trip or whatever, then maybe I would lay. If whatever the payout is big enough that it would be a real difference maker for you, maybe I would think about taking a guarantee in that case. But that would really be it. For the most part, I don't want to, I'm already giving the house money by making this silly bet that we love anyway. Why do I want to do it, kind of compound that by making another bet that's already against me? That's my thing. But I will take down the place bet. If I have, that 8 up there placed for $30 or $60 or whatever it is, and I'll take it down because, if I lose, at least I don't lose that extra 30, 60, whatever it is. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, that extra 70 you could have won is not the big deal there when you would have won 1,500, is it?
Exactly.
No, I'm the exact same way. Yeah, I do the same thing. I don't lay the bet. I can't do that. I've seen people do it on smalls and talls that only pay 30 to 1. We're missing the 5, and they'll lay the 5, and I don't get it. It's a horrible bet as is, and we know that, but it is fun. But if you're going to hedge it every time you have the opportunity, I mean, you might as well just go ahead and shoot yourself in the foot then, because you're just killing yourself at that point. You're taking your one chance at getting a big payout and cutting it in half. Is what you're doing.
And I know
I don't know why you'd want to do that.
And I know it's tempting. It feels good. Sometimes the box person will offer it to you. Sometimes the dealers will offer it to you. And I don't think they're doing it in bad faith. I think they want to see you get some money out of this. But, and it is, in the abstract, you are going to get money. As I said, you're going to get money on either side of that bet. But if you step back a little bit, overall, it's not a good decision.
Couldn't agree more. So, Josh, I think that's going to wrap it up for our questions that we had this week. I did get out to my local casino yesterday.
He's lying. I know in advance he's lying about this story.
I have already sent Josh a picture of the W2G associated with it.
That's why
I will put it on Twitter if I have to, because it is legit. But I gave Josh a really hard time last time because I left a day before he did in Vegas, and he claims he hit the all tall small twice and made all this money, and I missed out on it. So I go to my local Caesars property that's probably about a half an hour from my office after I got off work yesterday. It was probably 5 o'clock. Got walked up to the table. It was cold as ice. I think we had, 0.7, 0.7, 0.7 4 times in a row. And I'd only bought in, Josh, for probably, I don't even know, $2,000. I don't have credit there, and I didn't even bring a lot of cash with me. It was just, I was going to make a quick trip. So I was down to my last, I think, $400 that I had left. But I put my normal 10, 10, 10 on the all tall small, and I took a $10 fire bet. And I usually never take the fire bet. I have
tears flowing down my face right now as you're telling this.
I'm not a big fire guy. It doesn't feel like you ever hit 4 points, so it never pays. But anyways, this guy down at the other side of the table starts shooting. He doesn't say a word. He's very quiet. He has no place bets up. I think he's got a $15 pass line bet with no odds. He's taken a couple hard ways for $1 or $2. He comes out on a point, hits it instantly right back. I was like, oh, that's great. We finally hit a point. Gets another point established. It's a different one. Oh, look, he hit that one too. Well, that's kind of cool. I'm starting to get a couple bucks in front of me for a change. We keep going. Next thing I know, she's like, well, we got a fire bet going. And I was like, oh shit. I looked up and we had hit 4 points already. He made the 4 or 10, I think 3 times in a row. Even though he wasn't moving on to a new point, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Keep making those.
Right.
And my local property, Josh, they have 20 times odds.
I know.
You know my rule. I have to take full odds. So I'm just raking it in at that point. We hit the all tall small once during this process. And I think we hit the small again while we're doing this. But we got down to the final point, and finally on like probably his 15th point he established, he got on to the point that we actually needed. It was a 5. I can't believe the 5 was the last one waiting. But he got on to 5. And I was like, there's no way he's going to actually hit this. But I was still pretty excited because 250 to 1. I mean, it was still a terrific payout on a $10 bet. I was really excited about that. He rolls. He hits every crap number imaginable. It's 2, 3, 11, 12s over and over again, not hitting any box numbers. And all the guys next to me started turning their bets off. The dice went off the table. Cocktail waitress came by. Anything that could jinx it.
Could curse
stick
would,
change.
Right.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Anything that people hate had happened. And soon enough, there it was. He threw a 5 back, and we hit the 6-point fire bet. And Josh, have you ever hit a fire bet before?
Not a 6-pointer. In fact, Chris, you and I were talking recently. I don't remember if it was on air or off the air, about that neither one of us had ever hit a 6-point fire. You remember that? Just like a week ago or something.
Oh, that's true. We had.
I don't remember what the context
so that's
was,
why I hadn't hit it. But we hit the 6-point fire bet, and when you do hit it, for those that haven't, they do have to issue W2Gs like we talked about last week, because the bet was more than a 300 times payout, and it's more than $600.
Speaking of, right.
Yeah, so they did have to issue W2Gs. That shuts the game down effectively, at least at my property it does. They had to shut the table down effectively for about 30, 40 minutes while they're collecting IDs and player cards from people that had a fire bet, getting all the paperwork aligned. So for my $10 bet that I had finally, a ways down the line, I finally got everything back. That $10 bet paid $9,990 because it was $1,000 for one in this case. So that original bet was lost. But yeah, it was a very good experience. I'm not very upset about it. And Josh was absolutely the first person that I texted to rub it into his face.
That's
and
right.
Josh, I don't think I told you. Maybe I did. Right after I left the table, what did I do? I went over to a Heidi slot machine and played that. And I probably sunk, I don't know, $1,000 through that thing. I got one bonus. It was 30 spins, and I was so excited. And even better than that, Josh, I got the spin on the wheel and got 10 extra spins. And you know how much I made off that bonus? $37.12.
I'm proud of you, good man.
But it was a fun effort, and you did that to me, so thank you. But yes, hitting a 6-point fire bet is probably something I will never do again in my lifetime, but I am very glad that it happened.
That is very cool. Congratulations. That's neat.
Thank you.
It's been a while since I've played the fire. It's gone from... Well, I think it's coming back at some Caesars properties, I think, but it's gone from a lot of
Vegas
properties
and Caesars properties, they all have it. I mean,
yeah.
They have fire and all tall small. They keep it both.
Right.
And same thing at my local Caesars property, but yeah, it's hard to find outside of that for some reason.
Now, Chris, I'm assuming this goes without saying, but this was a standard craps table, not crapless, right?
Correct. The Caesars property locally doesn't have crapless.
God, I don't even think you can have the fire on a crapless. Maybe you can.
Oh, I don't know how you would do it, but that would be.
I mean, you could. You could
if
just
you
do
make
those
all 10
numbers.
points. Then
Anyway, I just know some of your local properties only have the crapless, so it made me think of that.
Yeah, no, that's not where I was this time, but obviously it actually worked out for a change, so I'm not complaining about that at all. Josh, tell people what happened with our contest.
So, as I kind of alluded to at the beginning of the show, we did have 3, 4, 5 people right after episode 3 get the answer to our what is the opening clip contest right. And then we didn't know it when we recorded episode 3.5 or we had anybody, but we're still honoring the progressive $5 in addition to the original $50 gift card that we wanted to offer the winner. And the winner was a person named Dan in Florida. And so congratulations. I am just super excited and also amazed that more than just me and my old school 1980s TV show knowledge came up with the episode Any Number Can Play from Scarecrow and Mrs. King season 4. If you have no idea what Scarecrow and Mrs. King is or was, it was a TV show on in the 80s. And I'll let you Wikipedia it and figure out what it is, but it starred Bruce Boxleitner and Kate Jackson of Charlie's Angels fame, and Bruce Boxleitner of, what would you say Bruce's fame is, Chris? Tron?
Yeah. Josh, I was born in the middle of the 80s. So you
don't have a lot of Bruce Boxleitner.
I don't have a ton of references here. But you know what? That's great. That's great that you love that show.
You missed the absolute, and I just thought of this. I hadn't thought of this until this very second, but the absolute perfect Bruce Boxleitner connection was Kenny Rogers' cohort in the Gambler movies.
Oh, well, I'm glad you've made that connection now. It all comes together.
This is what you come here for.
People kept sending me messages saying, hey, is it this? Is it this? I had to text Josh because I had no freaking clue where that clip came from. And people were saying TV shows I had never even heard of before. So,
including Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Josh, I went back and counted the amount of people that sent us the right answer today because I was actually curious.
Right.
We ended up with 41 people that sent the correct answer.
Seriously?
Yes.
Wow.
So now, granted, there was a first person, and that's the person that won. And we did kind of beat it over the head last episode saying we didn't have a winner when we did. So
sorry,
everybody got excited. But yeah, so to the 41 of you that had the correct answer, congratulations.
I'm just amazed. People must have cheated somehow.
I think it just means that our podcast skews towards an older demographic. It's all it is.
Sure. I can go with that too.
Oh my.
Anyway, so thank you all. I really had fun as I mentioned when we started this. I had fun finding that clip, sending it to Chris, and thinking it would be the perfect way to open our show. And hopefully you appreciated it. It's my little special contribution,
and it makes me laugh every time that I hear it. So I do appreciate it. If you'd like to donate to the cost of hosting the site, the podcast, or anything else that you have in mind, please click the button found on our homepage at crapvegas.com or visit our merch store for a one-of-kind Vegas Duffy t-shirt that no one should live without. And we teased it last time, but we do have a really exciting merch product coming out soon. Josh, do you think we should mention it now or should we hold?
Let's keep teasing it.
Oh boy, that's a shame for you people because I know what it is and I'm actually really excited about it. But anything else, Josh, you want to share before we get out of here today?
Oh, just the last thing I was going to say. Our friend Two-Way Heart 8 on Twitter, who we met at Zorkfest last December, had a good session. I don't remember. I think it was when he was in Vegas, but he tweeted something about, the crap session was going so well that his bets were pressed up so high that he didn't know what level to go next.
Yes, I forgot about that.
And I wanted to mention that really struck home, and I think that can strike home with anybody that that plays craps or probably gambles at any game and presses their bets a little bit as things are going well at whatever level you're playing, whether you're a $5 craps player or a $50 craps player.
It's all the same.
If a session is good and you get to that point where you don't know what to do next, I was just going to say that those are kind of the moments we dream about, is getting to that level where you have to ask the dealer, what should I do? What do I do here?
Or you just got to have somebody named Josh standing next to you that treats you like crap because you don't know what the normal press play is. I mean, who would have known that on a 5 or a 9 that the press play is 300 to 450 to 600 instead of 300 to 400 to 500?
Or 210 to 200 to 310 to 450 exactly.
On a 6 and 8. Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't I know those things being a newly minted, 4-month-old craps player, whatever it is we've been doing this for. But anyway, I wanted to congratulate me up too.
Congratulate Two-Way Hard 8 on his good session. And those times I just want to say are the most fun when you really, it gets to a level at whatever it is that you don't have any idea what to do. Hopefully you have a good crew that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that for some reason like listening to us, which I don't understand why, but thank you for those that you do. We do have a couple upcoming guest experiences for you. I think Josh and I are going to be sitting down with travel fanboy Adam Bauer tomorrow night to record something. I have no idea what it is or where it's going to be, or even if it's available to the public. I have no clue.
Pretty sure it's going to be about hats.
That would make perfect sense with Adam. I fully understand that. And then I know I'm going to be sitting down tomorrow with Tim Lawson on the Better Life. I assume for one of his podcast episodes, but he may just want to make fun of me. I'm not 100% sure about that either. I just kind of say yes to things, and whatever happens, happens.
But the good news is for me is you won't be able to go to the casino tomorrow night, so I don't have to hear stories about you're hitting the fire. That. I know you are.
Yeah, I was planning on going. We were going to record late tomorrow night, and I had it all set up, and then Tim comes in and just messes up that whole schedule. But that's okay. It's worth it. Anything for the Vegas community. I mean, Josh, we are influencers now, so
sure
we have to get out there in front of people. Oh my. Well, thank you guys all for listening. We really do appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.
Vegas, here we come.
Thanks for listening to the Crap Vegas podcast.
Have you ever been to Vegas?
Check out all our recent news and our Vegas trip calendar by visiting crapvegas.com.
See you in Vegas.